All right. Well, today let's talk about a movie. There's definitely a movie that exists in the ethos of dark gangster movies with twists and turns, very slightly, mostly based on real events. And that movie, of course, is the 2015 crime thriller Black Mass, starring the always wonderful Johnny Depp, as well as a whole bunch of other characters. And I think the movie perfectly portrays and truly sets out to be just this very dark kind of criminal, almost like a horror movie type thing, as opposed to other gangster movies that sometimes portray it in an almost, glamorous life. When you look at movies like Goodfellas, sure, there's lots of the bad stuff, but mostly movies like Casino and Goodfellas portray it as this kind of, cool, fun, everybody wins and loses and everybody, lives the gangster life, whereas Black Mass sort of portrays it almost as a horror film. So let's talk about it. Now, one of the movie's standout features is the main character, Johnny Depp, and he plays Whitey Bulger in a almost, I would say it very great Johnny Depp way, and I would say that he very much looks like a dark, scary gangster, and he plays it beautifully, but it's very uncanny the way he looks. He's obviously got tons of prosthetics and, facial makeups and aging techniques throughout the movie as it takes place over the course of a time periods. But yeah, I would say that the most standout feature is almost to a fault. Johnny Depp looks very, very morphed and changed into Whitey Bulger. Now, like Johnny Depp, who is fantastic in the movie, there's also a pretty great ensemble cast as well. You got Joel Edgerton as John Connolly, who is just this very, confident, almost gangster-esque FBI agent who's very much plays the fence the other time. You have David Harbour, who plays another FBI agent, who's very fantastic, and this was kind of as, if not before, the whole fame of Stranger Things. So this is kind of like a pre-David Harbour, so he's quite great in this as well. You got Benedict Cumberbatch, who's fantastic as a very corrupt politician, I would say, potentially, possibly, most likely. There's also Jesse Plemons, who plays a very rough and tumble caricature, and the movie actually starts off as his almost like his origin, so to speak, and he just looks like a very rough and tumble caricature from Boston back in the day in the 80s and 70s. But the role that very much captivated me in this movie is Kevin Bacon, who plays a kind of like FBI boss guy. He's got the nice office. He's very smart. He does play the fence a bit, but also is a very hard-lined, honest, good cop. And that part of it makes it very good to observe Kevin Bacon in this situation. He just brilliantly brings the life to part to life. And yeah, I would say Kevin Bacon is just fantastic in this movie. And he's very out of place because, these dark movies, Kevin Bacon, he's always portrayed as a nice, good, upstanding individual. But yeah, in this movie, he very much shines. Dakota Johnson is also in it as basically just a woman of Whitey Bulger's quote unquote a girlfriend. And yeah, she's in short in it, but I mean it has to be said that she does kind of put a good performance. There are many good actors in this, but we've gone over the main ones, and that's what it is. So yeah, like I mentioned, the movie is very dark, and that's almost to a fault for me because, when you watch these gangster movies, you kind of like, you're going to live the gangster life. Well, there's nothing good about the way this movie portrays. Funnily enough, the Whitey Bulger story in reality is he basically just gets to off with most of what he did. If you don't know the story of Whitey Bulger, he basically got away. He lived his entirety of his life. Yeah, he spent time on and off in prison, but most of his life, despite all the enormous amounts of crime and murder and drug trafficking and terrible shit that he did, he virtually got off with most of it as he went on the run basically throughout the 90s and the early 2000s and just did whatever. I can imagine probably not the best things, but very likely that. So for such a dark movie with such a dark premise, he really gets off, and the ending is quite hilarious. Spoiler alert, because it's kind of like he gets away. And they don't find him till 2011, and yeah, it's just, and he dies fairly shortly later in prison. But yeah, the Whitey Bulger story, very interesting to say the least. So I mean, yeah, I would say it's a good movie. I would say that the movie is very fantastic. It's very dark. It's very moody. There's a lot of very, very dark themes in it. And some of the scenes, especially when Whitey takes out that prostitute, is very dark and very icky feeling. But other than that, it's pretty good. It's not a bad movie. And it does kind of not take itself seriously at times. Adam Scott is in it as like an FBI agent, and that guy's impossible to take seriously. Perhaps he's kind of just like a background character just for a naive young FBI agent who doesn't know how dark the world is, whereas Joel Edgerton's John Connolly more is kind of a street level hustler, cop who understands and tries to work with the system. But I mean, like, some of John Connolly is such an interesting character in this movie because it really shows that he almost wants to be a gangster like Whitey Bulger, and he kind of lives that very thin line. And even though, like, the parts like having Whitey come into his house, it's like you would not want that. And his wife obviously leaves him after that, and it's like he's almost like, yeah, and that's his ultimate downfall because in the real story, he gets locked up for basically life, over basically being a part of these networks and letting these people get off and playing that fence. But yeah, I mean, he's a fascinating character because he could have done so much good for the world, but he ended up just kind of being a part of the badness of it. And yeah, like I said, it's a very interesting movie. There's lots of twists and turns. It's more of a darker gangster movie, but it does shine as one of the, not on the top echelons of like the Peaky Blinders, the Godfathers, the Casino, the Goodfellas, like those top echelon gangsters. um, Flicks, but it rests somewhere down below that, just partially because number one of how uncanny Johnny Depp is in it, the darkness of the movie, a very decrepit scenery, indeed. And yeah, it is a good time period piece. It feels very authentic. So yeah, I would totally recommend Black Mass. It's a good movie. It's hard to put it at a 7 to 8 out of 10. It's a 7 for me some at times because it's very dark. The story is very loose and goes all over the place. Johnny Depp's amazing in it, but looks very strange, and it's impossible not to point that out. But at parts it really shines. Kevin Bacon's fantastic. Some of the FBI interplay is very interesting, so that gets a 10 for me, and just tells a story that is a essential, lesser known version of the crime U.S. wave 80s, 70s, an insane story of Whitey Bulger, parts of his story. There's so much untold in this movie of the Whitey Bulger story, but plays basically into one of the most critical parts in the Winter Hill Gang, Whitey Bulger, the badness that he conducted and how just vicious of a criminal he was. So yeah, Black Mass, very interesting movie. So yeah, although it's not perfect, it's one of the movies that exists in the gangster echelons, and I'd recommend it. 7 to 8 out of 10 material easily, and if not anything, just to see Johnny Depp's wild persona in this, as he transforms quite literally almost into a vampiric gangster zombie creature. It's hard to actually pin down that, and I have to say, after seeing pictures of Whitey Bulger, he looks very unsimilar to how he actually looked in real life. So I don't know what they were going at with this, but he's very sinister. He's almost like a Jason Voorhees-esque character in this movie. Maybe that's what they were getting at. So interesting movie, Black Mass 2015. Should check it out.